Hey, friends. We're going to have a little chat about a murder book. We're going to talk about Jesse Q Sutanto's newest book, I'm Not Done With You Yet. And let me tell you, she's not. So, her main character, the protagonist of the book, Jane. Okay, so there's Jane, Thalia, and a sort of third character who's really relevant to the story, but she's kind of a dumbass. Her name is Ani, Ani, and and Ani's brother Ivan. So they're all important. Um, Jane grew up with her mom was always telling her to be this sweet person who never hang out with people because people didn't like her. People were unreliable. People would always leave her no matter where she was, no matter what. You're never going to have friends. You're never going to have anybody who cares about you long term. Just get used to being alone. But then she got into Oxford's MFA program and met Thalia. And when I tell you that she dropped hard for this woman, I mean, it was like um Ellen DeGeneres and her wife standing in front of that woman, and Ellen is just staring at the woman's boobs like I swear to God, that's how Jane saw Thalia. Like Ellen looking at a pair of boobs, and I mean that in the best way because I mean, let's be honest, boobs are nice, but anyway, so she meets Thalia, and it says in the beginning of the book that Jane um it doesn't, okay, I won't spoil that then. It does it I won't spoil what I was going to say, but the beginning of the book does describe Jane's personality a little bit. She's a midlist writer. She feels trapped in an underwhelming marriage. They live in the Bay Area in her really expensive house, living a life she's never really wanted. And then she meets Thalia and they lose touch after Oxford, but then Thalia goes to speak at SuspenseCon in New York at the Javits Center. So Jane thinks to herself, I'm going to come up with a plan. And this whole time you're thinking that Jane is, she's kind of painted as being mentally unstable. And there are some twists towards, I'd say part three is where it starts getting twisty and you learn the truth about certain characters in the book. Um, and you learn that may not be, that Jane is not who she was painted as. Um, she does have some mental health issues, but not what she thought. I don't want to give anything away because if you read this book, and you should, I want you to be surprised. Thalia is very cunning. She is a very cunning character. She is cutthroat. Like, you think that Jane is gonna be the one to like flip because everybody's talking about how Jane is a little off and oh, oh, I invited her here, but and trying to paint her as this awful person. And maybe she is. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. She's young. They're both still, I think, in their late 20s or early 30s, so they're very young. They both got married after they left university. They, did their things, became writers. Thalia skyrocketed to the top of the bestsellers list with her books, and Jane did not. And she's described solidly as a mid-list writer throughout the whole book. You're just a mid-list writer, Jane. You're just a mid-list writer. And it's like, okay, Poor Jane, I guess. I mean, imagine how that would feel if everyone just kept saying that to you through the whole stinking book. You'd probably feel pretty bad, pretty down on yourself. Anyway, um, I really liked the way the story developed. I think the author did a great job writing, and building up the characters so that you didn't know really what to expect. Like, I had no idea the turns that it was going to take at the end of the book. I kind of had some suspicions about Ani being less than forthright about things. I just kind of got a weird feeling about her throughout the book. She was very, always kind of looking at Jane like, oh, it's you again. Why are you here? And just hoity and wanting to be surrounded by Thalia's open arms and welcoming personality and uh you know um she Thalia was very she had a great way of just drawing people in and m- making them think that they needed her to be in their lives or everything would fall apart because it's Thalia Ashcroft, and so like when she met Jane on the train to school and she and Jane hung out, got to know each other, and she was very warm to Jane on the train, very nice, very friendly. Then they got to Oxford and she was nice, but there was definitely, I think, a little bit of a personality change in her once they actually got to Oxford. um and I think she I don't know, I feel like she was the kind of character who sort of melded herself to those around her, Thalia, and kind of wanted to make herself fit in that way by seeming like she was a certain way around certain people. Um, yeah, I mean, and that you'll kind of find out the pieces of the puzzle will come together with everything. Jane is very um she's definitely, I think, got a lot of anxiety. That's she needs to kind of, and I can tell you, I know how that goes. Anxiety makes you feel very weird. As far as what else she thinks she has going on, eh, I think she's just a very, I don't know. I think she's just a very nervous person. I don't want to give anything away, but she does learn some things about herself, which I liked. She comes to terms with a lot about who she is and what she wants in her life. She really learns to appreciate what she has and goes through some developments with her husband that change their relationship with each other as well. Her husband is also a writer, and they live in California, doing their thing, writing books. And I think she looks at him as having all these faults that once she kind of changes her personality a bit, she views things or changes her viewpoint, not her personality, but changes her viewpoint about her situation. I think she sees her husband a little differently at the end of the book. Um, and she definitely sees Ani and Thalia in a different light. Both of them grew into these characters that were very self-centered. They were very, like, everything was about them. And that was kind of frustrating, but I did like the twist where you find out that the characters are not really who you think they are. I think this was a very good twisty book. Um so to wrap it up, I loved Jane and Thalia. I disliked Ani. I think Antoine was a very sweet, cuddly bear of a character, and what happened to him was tragic. But knowing what I know, it was going to happen. I think it was really too bad what she did to Kurt and her husband. Um, and but I liked how those were thrown in there. I liked the development of the characters. The writing was great, and I loved that I just couldn't put this book down. Like, I needed to find out what was going to happen and who was going to, were people going to die? Were people going to do this or that? Were people going to, how was it going to happen and when? Um, it's there's this theory in romance books that you're always going to have a happy ending. I mean, you know that it's always going to end with the people getting together, but the joy of reading romance is reading about the how. How are they going to get together? So with psychological thrillers, there's probably going to be some creepy ass shit and some scary stuff going on. But it's the question of how the author will develop that. And I think that Jesse Q Sutanto did a great job. I love her books. This one was very different from Dial A Ferrante's, and I am really glad that I read it. Definitely 5 out of 5 stars.